Connection, opportunity, possibility. It's what we all want. Spectrum has built a world where anything is possible, with products and services designed to work better together for a seamless connectivity experience. A connection to family and friends, a connection to education, and a connection to new opportunities. So there's no limit to how big we can dream. That's Life Unlimited. That's Spectrum.
Welcome to Mind Love, episode 140. Today's episode is all about how to process your emotions.
Being depressed and being anxious is part of our human experience. There are moments that cause that kind of emotional response. It is the self-rumination where we get into that looping, where we go like around and around in the merry-go-round, or we spiral down, and we repeat and replay those thoughts, those emotions over and over and over again. That's what becomes unhealthy. It's not the emotion itself. Like, I really believe there are no like positive or negative emotions. I really think maybe there are high vibe emotions, there are maybe lower vibe emotions, but in the reality of it, all emotions to me are good and necessary and healthy.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
Hi, friends. First of all, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you're always updated about new episodes. Plus, subscribers and reviews are really, really helpful to me, and it's a really easy way to give back if this content is helpful to you. So I just want to give a shout out to someone who left me a recent review that really touched my heart. Katarina says, I have been listening to this podcast for a few months now. Every single episode has been so unbelievably helpful. The insight Melissa has and the authenticity is palpable. I'm grateful for this podcast, what it's helping me heal, and supporting my growth. I love this podcast. Thank you so much, Melissa. Well, thank you so much, Katarina. It means so much to me to read things like this. So if you're out there and you haven't left a review yet, I would be so appreciative if you did. But of course, sending you all my love either way. And now into the good stuff. Today we're going to be talking about how to allow our emotions to run through us instead of avoiding them or getting stuck in them. And this is an episode that I really need reminders of lately. I've had so many emotions these days. So first, I have a lot to update you on today. I'm recording this episode just about a week before you're hearing it, and usually I'm a little more ahead of schedule, but I've been dealing with a ton of morning sickness and first trimester discomforts. Yep, I am finally going on the journey to mommyhood, and I am so excited. But also, it's been a lot, and I feel completely unprepared for what I'm experiencing right now. So right now, I'm about 9 weeks pregnant, and most people wait until just after the first trimester to announce their pregnancies because there's a risk of miscarriage. But my thought process is, if the worst case scenario happens, I'm going to need support, and I'm going to be sharing about it anyways. I really don't like the messaging around when women should and shouldn't tell about one of the most profound experiences of their lives. Because first of all, it's difficult, and women need each other. And second, of course women go in unprepared for the first trimester. No one's really sharing about it. I thought the first trimester would be a breeze. I'm not showing that much yet. I figured I'd just be able to keep my normal routines. But what I didn't realize is that in reality, I am super sick most of the time. I have about 10% of my usual energy, not to mention coping with the changes happening to my body, which might not be a big deal to most people, but for someone who's dealt with such a history of eating disorders and body image stuff, things like this can really trigger that. And I am dealing with it in stride. There's a lot of healing happening that I'm really grateful for, but it's still a thought. It's still there. I also didn't really realize that 1 in 10 pregnancies end in a miscarriage. I knew it was a risk, but I didn't realize it was 10%. And tons of women end up feeling like they've failed when it happens. And I honestly don't think that not sharing about it is really helping anyone because they feel like they're the only one that's miscarried. Or they feel like their bodies failed them or they've failed their husbands. And one final thing. So say the worst case scenario happens and I do miscarry. I know that I'm going to need support in that time. I know a lot of women do. But imagine the difference of suddenly telling somebody, I just had a miscarriage. It would be really hard for them to feel what you're feeling or to really understand how much support you need in that moment because they didn't see your excitement during the process. They didn't know how much you really felt like you'd be losing once it happened. So I've decided to break the mold a little and share a little earlier than most people do. I also want to encourage other people that are going through this to ask yourself, are you not sharing about your pregnancy because you actually don't want to or because you've been told that it's not the best idea? Do what feels right to you, not what everyone else does or what Google tells you to do. And know that yes, if the worst case scenario happens, it might be hard to share that with people, but would you be sharing it anyways? So just think about it, especially because you will have a lot of emotions during this time, and going through all of this alone can be really hard. Which brings me to our topic of the day. We live in a society that puts the mind on a pedestal, but in many ways it contributes to us cutting off our relationships with our emotions and our bodies and our spirit. And then we wonder why most of the population has anxiety or depression or some other mental imbalance. We're putting all our energy on our thought processes. We're essentially living in our heads. In today's world, creating balance takes intention and it takes action because our environments are unbalanced. It encourages overthinking and not showing emotion and numbing from our bodies with alcohol or medication or Netflix binges or forcing our bodies into a desired shape. And more people are cutting off their relationship with spirit too. So today our guest is Mary Hyatt. She's a life and business mindset coach who specializes in helping people move from living a life of burnout to a life where they are connected to their emotions, their body, and their spirit. So 3 key things we will learn are how we contribute to mental imbalances, why people are so afraid to connect to their emotions, and 4 steps for processing your emotions in a healthy way. And an extra surprise for those of you who are a Mind Love Premium member, there's a worksheet that goes along with this episode all about how to process your emotions that you can use at the end of every day when something big comes up. So that'll be in a new section in your membership nook called Worksheets. For those of you who are interested in signing up for Mind Love Premium, just head to mindlove.com/premium. You'll get twice the episodes in a private feed that you can import straight to your favorite podcast player, plus exclusive meditations and more. Plus, you'll be on my VIP favorites list and support Mind Love in a new way. But before we dive in, do you wish you had a little reminder to help you stay aligned each day? Just sign up for the Morning Mind Love for daily inspirational messages right to your inbox. I get messages from people every single day about how the Morning Mind Love is their favorite way to start their day, or that the message that came through is exactly what they needed to hear. It's kind of like your own personal inspiration oracle. Just visit mindlove.com and sign up right there on the homepage. Plus, you'll get some amazing free gifts when you do, like a free guided binaural affirmation meditation designed to rewire your brain to your highest self. And you'll get one of my favorite tools, a booklet of my personal power lists to help you gain clarity and live each day with intention. And it's all completely free. Just go to mindlove.com to sign up. Or if you're out and about, text the word morning to 33777. That's morning to 33777. And now let's welcome Mary Hyatt to the show.
Hey, Melissa. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm actually really excited to talk to you because I realized that I've actually taken your dad's best year ever course like 3 years ago. And it was,
so cool.
In the very beginning of my entrepreneur journey. I started this podcast in December 2nd of 2017. And I just wanted to make sure I was still in groups of people that we could keep each other accountable and that I was really working on my goals, because when I launched this, I was really goal oriented to the point of launch. And then I'm like, okay, I need something else that keeps structure. And Pat Flynn recommended his course. And so I went through it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is his daughter. So I'm really excited about it.
How fun. Isn't it fun? I feel like everybody's like 2 degrees away from each other, really. Like we all really actually know each other, like in some fashion. It's so fun.
Especially in the entrepreneur world, because I remember feeling kind of terrified when I started all of this because I was the only person in my friendship circle really blazing that trail. So people didn't understand. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me recently just saying, can we talk about how when you're on a path of growth, how you lose friends and why that might happen? And I was like,
Totally.
well, it's because you're focused on something else that other people don't really understand. I think some people's limiting beliefs might come through and almost feel like they're being like trying to sabotage you or being critical of you, when really it's just those are the beliefs that are running their life. And so now that I'm in this world, though, it's interesting how quickly I changed my entire friendship circle. You just start to get to know people and realize that, yeah, everybody does know each other.
It's so crazy. I was just having this conversation with my boyfriend, no kidding, last night about friendships. And I feel like having kind of done this work for 8 or 9 years now, I would say it's like, I feel like every couple of years that happens. And I was just expressing I'm in this season right now where I'm feeling really disconnected from people. Like I had this just beautiful group of friends, and now it's kind of whittled itself down to like 1 or 2 people. And especially now that we can't like go out and just travel and go see everybody and make it easy with COVID and everything. It's this weird place of like, I feel like in my own life, I'm kind of up leveling and really challenging more limiting beliefs, like going to the next layer, the next onion layer of all the things. And it's so interesting to go through those cycles of realizing like, okay, here I am in a place of growth and wanting to expand my mind, expand my consciousness, expand the work that I'm doing. And not everybody is going to go with me on that journey. And it doesn't say anything bad about them. It's just like, it comes to that place where you can't relate. There's nothing to talk about anymore, really. It's like having a conversation speaking 2 different languages. So I don't know. Now that I've been through it a few times, I can go, oh, okay, this is what's happening. Like I can see it and have like faith that there are beautiful people coming to me that I haven't quite arrived yet. But I'm like, okay, I'm ready for those friends now. Like, let's bring it on. But it's so interesting how that happens.
Yeah. And it's a good point that you make where we think that, okay, well, then I'm an entrepreneur. And so I'll go through this and I'll shed those layers and I'll grow these new ones and whatever it might be. But really, it does happen in cycles, and it might happen at every single phase of your journey. It's also, though, emotional, where, just because we know that, hey, I trust this time that something better's on the other side, or I know that I'm going to end up aligning with my people, it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt losing those other people. Or even if you're thinking, I really feel like this friendship isn't really for my highest good anymore, it doesn't make the pain of that loss any less.
Right. Totally. It's like there's an absolute grief factor at play every single time. I mean, it's heartbreaking. I mean, it's like, I think when you spend time with people and you live life with people, and not to say that every cycle you lose your friends and you have to start all over. I mean, there's people in my life that have been with me kind of the whole way through, the whole journey through, but it's just sad, and like there's this recognition in this moment of acknowledging that these people played a significant role in your life and moving to a new season. And it's usually pretty mutual. Like even if it's not, at least my experience is maybe it's not a horrible, dramatic, emotional breakup, there is still this void in your life of, having that person to call or to hang out with or whatever it might be. And it is sad. I mean, there's a real element of grief that goes along with this that I think, to say like, it's like, okay, I'm upgrading and I'm going to get some new friends and it's going to be great. I mean, I think that's sort of spiritually bypassing the situation, which is easy to do, but it's like, no, like, let's just acknowledge this for what it is. And I love kind of getting into emotions about this because I think so often we want to deny our emotions and not feel what we're feeling, but it's just so important to give voice to the fact that these cycles, upgrading, shifting, shedding, letting go of limiting beliefs, old ways of being, I mean, it's painful. I mean, you feel it deeply.
Especially with what all of us are going through right now. It's so interesting. The amounts of ups and downs I've gone through since the beginning of COVID. And I do believe that for a little bit, I was unconsciously spiritually bypassing. Like when everything hit, I thought, oh, I'm good. Like there's something on the other end of this. This is a great time. What's the universe telling me to do? All this stuff. And then all of a sudden I was like majorly depressed for a few weeks. And then I had to make some changes and I had to be intentional about it. I'm like, oh yeah, this is a part of that growth that I speak about. And I've forgotten how difficult it is sometimes. And so to take that time to actually sit there and feel it instead of just being like, everything's fine on the other side. How are you dealing with that? What are some of the things that you've been going through this process? And what are your steps to actually sit there and feel your emotions?
Yeah. I'm so glad we're talking about this and I love that you brought up like that initial kind of reaction, which I think is our coping strategy. Like we all have our own coping strategies when life gets hard, when things feel, especially with COVID, like we've never been through this before. So it is uncharted territory. And I think I was joking with my boyfriend. I said, remember when we thought COVID was going to last like 2 weeks, And I think when you go into something and you almost like see the finish line, you think, okay, like I can get through this. I can handle this. I have skills. I have tools, bring in all of my mindful work, my conscious work, all of the stuff that I've been doing for years and years. Okay, great. Let me bring that to the surface. And yet you said exactly my experience. It's like, okay, fast forward a month into it and starting to see that finish line going further and further and further away from us. And now not even having an idea of when we're going to finish it. Like, where is the finish line? And so I think what's challenging about that is we don't know, at least my experience has been, and with my clients, my coaching clients, it's like, we don't know how to regulate the energy output. So when you have a clear destination, you know how much energy to put out, right? You go, okay, I've got 3 more miles left. Let me, really go for it here and then taper off here. And you are able to really navigate with the end in mind. And right now, what's so interesting and so different and challenging about this season is that we don't have that end in our sight. It could be the end of this year. People have been talking about it going into next year. And so I feel like it's requiring a whole new level of skill set to address like this unknown, this huge giant question mark. And I really want to just acknowledge that for a second, because I know that we're talking about that lightly, but like there's a lot of heaviness that can go along with that, a lot of stress. I know for a lot of my clients, a ton of anxiety of being in a phase of uncertainty. And so I think that if we try to just cope our way through it, meaning we deny it, we distract ourselves. I know that for me, that was my go-to at the beginning. I just was like, okay, I'm just going to work a lot more. I'm going to get a lot of things done. I'm going to focus in on my business. And that was totally not me spiritually bypassing, but that was me 100% coping. Like, where's an area that I feel confident in? Let me give that energy. I've seen people do that with their bodies, with dieting, with exercising, just kind of like a hyper obsession and focus on that. It could be totally like checking out and just avoiding everything that's going on. So there's a lot of ways in which we handle that intense emotion. So, okay. So Melissa, you were asking, okay, how do I like process through emotions? Is that right?
Yeah, like I'm sure you've been going through your own ups and downs. And what's your process for dealing with that without just spiritually bypassing? Before we go deep today, I want to give you a little gift, and I want to give it to you every single day. It's called the Morning Mind Love. I know how life can be. You're all fired up after an inspiring episode, and then a new day or a new challenge comes at you, and it's just hard to keep up that energy. Well, the Morning Mind Love is kind of like an oracle from your higher self to help you start each day with a positive focus. Plus, when you sign up, you get 2 free gifts, a 30-minute binaural meditation and 30 days of journaling prompts to help you remember who you truly are. And it's all completely free. So join over 9,000 people and go to mindlove.com to sign up or text the word morning to 33777. You know what I love about the start of a new year? It's kind of like opening a fresh notebook. 365 blank pages just waiting to be filled with your story. But sometimes we get stuck trying to write that story alone. Maybe there's a chapter you've been wanting to revise, or maybe you're just ready for a whole new plot twist in 2025. But here's what I've learned from my own journey with therapy. It's kind of like having an editorial partner for your life story. Someone who helps you see the patterns that you might have missed, who gives you the tools to write stronger chapters ahead. And that's why I'm so excited about BetterHelp. They've made therapy accessible and easy, serving over 5 million people worldwide. With over 30,000 credentialed therapists, each with different specialties, you can find someone who really gets your unique story. But what I love is how flexible it is. Everything is online, and you can easily switch therapists anytime at no extra cost until you find the perfect fit. And it's not just for people that are dealing with major challenges. Therapy can help anyone become the best version of themselves. So write your story with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/mindlove today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/mindlove. You've been going through your own ups and downs, and what's your process for dealing with that without just spiritually bypassing?
For me, honestly, I think the first piece of it is I kind of go through like a 4-step process with this ultimately. And this is true for any emotion that I'm feeling, but I think it's particularly relevant now because I'm having to feel in a way that feels like a spiritual practice, because my default is, I think anytime we're in that survival brain, we want to avoid, we want to go fight, flight, freeze, or totally disassociate. And so to kind of hone in and go, all right, number one, let me breathe and notice that I'm feeling something. Like that kind of moment where we say, I am feeling XYZ. I am feeling anxious. I am feeling stressed. I am feeling sad. I'm feeling lonely. I mean, whatever that might be, the first step is we have to breathe. We have to name it. We have to sort of pause and slow down. And that's the spiritual practice of it, I think, is just saying, okay, I'm willing to acknowledge that this is my present reality. What am I feeling? What needs to be experienced? What is asking for my highest attention right now? Like I'm having an emotional response and here's what it is. So I think the first piece of this is just breathing and noticing, hey, I'm feeling something. So that's the first part. That's like the willingness to go there. And then the second step in this is to allow it. And this is an acronym, by the way, that's BACK, back. And that to me is like coming back to present, coming back to ourselves, coming back to this moment. So the B is the breathe. The A is the allow. And this is where we kind of almost like give ourselves permission to allow this discomfort and acknowledge that in this moment, I want to bolt. Like I want to shut down. I want to run. I want to cope in all of my old ways that I typically cope. And this is where we choose a new response. We give ourselves permission and allow ourselves to be honest and be honest with what it is in the discomfort, in the hard, and the uncomfortable. And we can meet that and ask ourselves, okay, how can I sit with what's here? How can I allow this fear, this anxiety, this stress to be here? Like without trying to cope it away, numb it away, ignore it away, almost saying like, it's okay for me to feel this way. I am safe. I can get through this. This is going to pass. So we allow it. So we recognize it, we breathe into it, and then we allow it. And then the third step to this process, the C of back, is to connect. And this is where I really like this step because this is where we begin to change our patterns. And this is where we begin to get curious. Like, okay, where do I feel this in my body? Where do I feel that anxiety in my body? Where do I feel the stress in my body? Is it my belly? Is it my throat? Is it my heart? What does it feel like in my body? Does it feel tight? Does it feel constricted? Does it feel heavy? And we begin to connect in a somatic way to our body. And we connect with where this is coming from. What part of myself is believing in something that is causing this emotional reaction? Where does this come from? What am I reacting to? Why am I triggered? Like what's coming up? And so connecting with ourselves, connecting with how it feels in our body, connecting with where this is coming from. And then the last piece of this step, the fourth step, is kiss. And that's the K. And this is to kiss it. And I love this idea of like, okay, how can I bring some loving into this situation? How can I be with this fear, this stress, this anxiety in a really tender, compassionate, loving way? Without judgment, without criticism, without trying to change it or fix it. But it's like, how can I kiss it? How can I, you think about like a mother kissing somebody's wound. How can I slow down and nurture? And for me, I have to like speak to myself like a little child. Like, oh, sweetie, I know you're scared. I hear you. I see you. You matter. Like, I get it. And so this is where I get to practice that almost like compassionate self-talk and really love on myself and ask myself, like, what is it that I need? Do I need to go do some yoga? Do I need to journal this out? Do I need to go walk around and connect and ground myself? Do I need to call my therapist? Do I need to cry it out? What is it that I need? And that's that K, that's that kiss. So we can breathe, name it, allow that discomfort, connect with it, get familiar with what it feels like in our body, where it came from. And then lastly, kissing it, really meeting it with tender, compassionate, loving energy, and then meeting that need.
I love that. There's so many things that came up for me during that process. One thing that I'm reminded of is the process of reparenting yourself. And there's these little things that you say that sounds so simple when we hear it. But if we actually take the time and the intention to do that with ourselves, you can feel the healing as it's happening. And I used to be the type of person that would just read books a lot when I was first beginning my healing journey. And so I'd read and read and read and think just because I was consuming the information that somehow it was penetrating me or applying to my life. But it wasn't until I reached a breaking point that I'm like, okay, let me just do these exercises. Let me actually sit in stillness instead of picking up another book, because it's the difference of, am I going to reach outside of myself for the answers one more time, or am I going to try to see what I've learned so far and find the answers within myself and actually integrate some of that stuff? So that reparenting advice of just being like saying consciously those words to yourself, like, you are okay, this is fine. And this is something that I've been going through quite a bit. I mentioned that I'm pregnant with my first child right now, and it's early, and I've been going through a lot of different emotions with this, because first of all, people don't announce their pregnancy usually until about 12 weeks. And one of the reasons that I like to break that mold is because what I found is when I became pregnant, I was completely unprepared for it because nobody talks about it at this point. So this is a downside for a bunch of different reasons. First, I had no idea that 1 in 10 pregnancies are miscarriages, which is why people don't share it, because then they need to go back and share that they've lost it. But to me, still, the type of person I am, it's like, okay, so say worst case scenario, I lose it and I have to tell everybody that I've lost it. Would I rather have the support of everyone around me, or would I rather have to go through that alone too? And if you announce like, hey, I just lost a baby and nobody knew you're pregnant, it's hard for them to even feel anything with you because they didn't see your excitement. They didn't see all the stuff you were going through that. I had no idea that the first trimester is like one of the hardest parts about it. I'm exhausted anyways. There's so many different things that I'm feeling and I'm just emotional. And I used to have an eating disorder I still suffer with some body image things that I have to consciously work through. And I knew the weight gain of pregnancy was going to be triggering. And so as much as I'd like to say I've been beyond that part, I have to every day feel what I'm feeling about the changes happening to my body and say things consciously. Like, look at the amazing miracle that your body is creating right now. That your body isn't meant for bikini selfies. It is meant for life and to carry you through. And without that intention, though, I would be a mess. Not to say that I'm not a mess sometimes anyways, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting. And I love what you're touching on. And this is this idea of community. And I think about the emotional experience that we're all going through. Then you throw on top of that, like any kind of additional emotional stress, like for you, all of the shift and transition and change in your body and just emotionally with this pregnancy. You think about, I've had a lot of friends who have just lost grandparents during this time, parents during this time, just like an abnormal amount of grief around death right now. And I think that we have been taught almost, like you said, to just sort of keep that in, like, okay, this is something that isn't socially acceptable to bring out into the public, like your experience of newly being pregnant. And the way in which we as a society, like, protect these totally normal life experiences, but have, for whatever reason, deemed them too uncomfortable to share publicly, too uncomfortable to deal with. I mean, even death of any kind, we have a really challenging time talking about end of life, talking about death. And what I think about, if I rewind in my psyche from like old past lives, or just this understanding of tribal kind of existence, like ancient community, there was never these off-limit times of life, seasons of life, moments of life that wasn't handled as a group. And I just feel so sad that we have lost that in today's society, because you're absolutely right. Like, how can someone walk alongside of you and grieve with you? Like, let's say they don't know about this pregnancy, you lose this child. It's so isolating to have to do that emotional work by ourselves. And I really, truly believe that we were not meant to do those things alone. And I just love that you are like stepping out from that social suggestion of what you cannot share at a certain amount of time or whatever it might be, and to just really own the journey. And that when we can bring other people along inside of that, whether it's the celebration and the excitement of it or the grief of it or whatever it might be, there's such healing and intimacy that gets created when we can share what we're experiencing emotionally. And what's so interesting about this season right now with COVID is that we're having a collective emotional experience. Like, I think sometimes when we go through hard things, it feels like we're the only person going through it and nobody can relate or nobody can get it. And what I think that's so beautiful about right now and the opportunity is that we can all not only reparent ourselves and be able to go in and really love on the parts of ourselves, the little parts of ourselves that are scared right now or fearful, or this is triggering on just, a million and a half different ways, that we now can almost bring in that loving parental energy for each other. Like, create space, hold space to be there when our loved ones, our friends, our family are in similar emotional experiences of that fear, of that stress, of that grief, of loss, whether it's the loss of a job or whatever right now. And I think this idea, when I think about reparenting, it's so much about how we speak to ourselves and how we speak to others. And that internal dialogue is everything. And it's really cool to hear you share about shifting that, like with the body stuff. Girl, like, I am so all over that. I do so much body image work. That's what I love to teach on and preach on. And it is so much about creating space to change how we relate to ourselves, to this time, and to our bodies. It's just that internal dialogue is everything.
What's interesting too with the body image stuff, we did begin to question our beliefs or our programming through the media. That was one of the first things I remember, even when I was younger, seeing society calling out media for their messaging around bikini bodies and how a woman should look and all of this stuff. But we don't question a lot of other things. And maybe we're just slow to do it, and hopefully we will eventually. But it's kind of like with this whole pregnancy thing. Like, I Googled, is 9 weeks too early to share your pregnancy? Just because I wanted to see what would come up. And the actual thing, you know how when you Google things and it'll show you a little like clip at the top of the top article? It actually said, yes, 9 weeks is too early. You want to wait till 12 weeks in case you lose this baby. And I'm like, says who? What is this? The patriarchy? So women don't talk during the time that they're having the hardest time. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm tired all the time. I'm cranky. I'm emotional, all this stuff. It's like, do you want us to keep silent until that's over and you're in the second trimester when that's apparently you're full of energy and you feel great? Like, what is that? And so it takes kind of zooming out and saying like, well, why am I being told this? Okay, it makes sense in theory. And for some people, maybe that might be way too hard for them. But also ask, is it really too hard for you? Or is that what you've been told? Like, do you really want to suffer through that alone and have to tell people after the whole thing happened because you then need someone to cry with? Or do you want to open up to a few different people? Like, what is that really? And when I've studied like the red tents of like women's societies way back in the day when women used to come together because we were kind of pushed out of other things, it's always taken a village. We've always been there to help each other, even through like our first menstruation and things like that. And now just everything is a secret. And like you talked about death, where we're just supposed to kind of mourn and get over it. What if it's celebrated? What if we questioned our beliefs around death being so sad and thought about what is really happening in death and the transcendence of the soul, and how do we want to consciously change our experience of that as individuals and as a collective, and then work from there? And that's kind of what just changed my mind about like, I have a platform. Other people might not feel like it's their place to speak about this out loud, but I want to share. Like, I want to bring people into this conversation and show you that there's another way. And worst case scenario, if that happens, you guys are going to be with me through that too, because I'm going to need the support. You know what's crazy? After all these years of hosting Mind Love and talking to some of the world's leading experts, one of the biggest eye-openers for me has been just how much our gut affects, well, everything. When my gut feels good, my mind feels clearer, my intuition is stronger, and I just feel more balanced. And that's why I'm excited about Zoe, a science-backed nutrition company that is totally changing how we understand our gut health. They've created the most scientifically advanced at-home gut test and built the world's largest microbiome database. So when you get your results, you're not getting generic advice. You're getting insights about your body that other companies just don't have the data to provide. There's also just so much misleading health information out there. Food companies even pay influencers to promote ultra-processed foods as healthy. And that's why I love that Zoe relies purely on science. Real science. The randomized controlled trial showed that participants were 4 times as likely to report better sleep and more energy, all thanks to the info from the largest microbiome database on the planet. So go to Zoe.com and find out what Zoe membership could do for you. And because you listen to Mind Love, you can use the exclusive code MINDLOVE10 to get 10% off membership. As a Zoe member, you'll get an at-home test kit and personalized nutrition program to help you make smarter food choices that support your gut. That's Zoe.com. Use MindLove10 at checkout. Trust your gut. Trust Zoe.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Komm du noch?
If you've heard that sound from Babbel before, I bet you do. Babbel is the science-backed language learning app that actually works. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts, Babbel gets you on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. With over 16 million subscriptions sold and a 20-day money-back guarantee, just start speaking another language with Babbel. Right now, up to 55% off your Babbel subscription at babbel.com/Spotify podcast. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify podcast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Well, and everything that you're saying just reminds me of this idea that at the end of the day, life is sacred. All of life is sacred, like the beginning of life, the end of life. And sadly, I think the Western culture has lost this idea of just sacredness. And if you think about throughout all time, all religions, there were always these rituals, these moments of kind of looking at life and having a way to signify this new stage of life, this new stage of life. And now in our Western world that has for so long really championed the mind, the intellect over the body, over our experience of life, kind of the ego versus the soul. The thing that we've lost, I feel like, is this ability to celebrate these moments through ritual. Like if you go back into red tent society, if you go back into tribal culture, no matter if it was becoming a woman, becoming a man, having these moments that were like crucial, beautiful, like moments of ascension, there was some kind of rite of passage, some kind of ritual that marked the occasion. And with everything, there was this like sacrament. There was this sacredness of these moments of life. And I feel like now we just like move on and not only move on, but we really have begun to see the body and our emotions as the enemy. So it's like, for example, our body changing during pregnancy, our body's weight fluctuating, its shape fluctuating. Oh my God, all of a sudden, I'm nervous that I have to get this pre-baby body back. And there's this, you look at every freaking magazine out there that is 10 days to get your pre-body back. And you're going, pre-baby body back. And you're going, what? Like, can I not just be with my baby in this moment? Can I not just have this beautiful time without having to worry about losing weight and getting thin again? There are so many moments like that, even with our periods, where our cycles, women are taught to loathe and hate and just hate their body for having their cycle, versus in ancient days, there was this beautiful respect to our cycles. In fact, there is this beautiful kind of connection between our own femininity and the cycles of the moon and the cycles of our own womb and the 28-day cycle that goes on. And so what's just fascinating to me is how we've lost that connection to the sacred, to these moments where we can, through ritual, celebrate these moments. And we kind of have some of those, like gender reveal party, although I have a guess that's kind of going out of style now. But we've had these kind of things where, okay, yeah, let's like mark these occasions. We have a baby shower, we have a bridal shower, things like that. But when we really look at our ability to honor the changes of the body, the changes of the seasons of life, the passing on to other realms, we don't have a lot of knowledge of how to do that well. We just sort of fear it, try to ignore it, take a pill for it, and disconnect.
Right. And it's so interesting, too, when we really think about the idea of this balance of mind, body, spirit. And I almost want to add another layer where I feel like emotions is this extra layer because, yeah, it's happening sort of in your body, sort of in your mind, but it's like the energy that's flowing through it. And maybe that's closer to spirit. But those are the things we tend to cut off. It's like, well, let me not feel this emotion, or let me get out of my body. And we are in these mind spirals all the time. And we wonder why all of these mental illnesses or mental imbalances or depression or anxiety are skyrocketing. It's like, I think it's some crazy, like 80-something% of people have depression or anxiety at this point. It's like, well, if you're living in that space and you're not balancing it out anywhere else, of course there's going to be an imbalance. You can't just live in that mind space. You're going to be overthinking everything without actually feeling into it. Where do you get the clarity if you're just overthinking it, especially when you consider the fact that we think that these thoughts that we're having is truly us, that this is me. That thought that I'm having is an identification of who I am as a person, when most of the time, those thought spirals are just habits that we've built. If you allow yourself, if you've been programmed in a certain way and you allow yourself to repeat those things over and over again, that's going to be the first thing that you think of. So when I was really hard on my body, I was also hard on other people's bodies. I'd look past people and be like, why is she confident to wear a crop top when I'm not? And it's horrible. And when I had to consciously change those things, I had to be like, okay, it was too hard for me to say it to myself first. I couldn't feel myself believe it. So instead, if I would feel that judgment with other people, I would consciously change it. And it took work. And I'd be like, wow, that person's beautiful. I really love their confidence. Or whether it was shifting to something I liked about them or whatever. And then slowly but surely, I noticed that I started to view myself in a different way. So it was a very conscious process of reprogramming my thoughts, whereas we just kind of have forgotten that we have that control. And a lot of it, that time it takes to, okay, what are your thoughts saying? How is it making you feel? Is that how you want to feel? Are you connected to something deeper than yourself? All of those things take a conscious awareness and an intention and action to do to rebalance. And I think that's what's so needed right now.
Totally. And I think what's fascinating about this, I remember having kind of a similar revelation as I was learning about this mind-body connection, was that, okay, we have been taught as a society, Western culture, that being emotionally numb equals health. And so this is what, if you think about what medication does, and believe me, I was on Zoloft for like 6 years because I had dealt with insane anxiety and depression. I mean, like over the top, really, really bad. And so I am not saying any shame for taking medication. But what I realized through that process is that medication totally flatlined me. I mean, it was like I was checked out, numbed out, asleep to life completely. And what I realized as I became more aware and sort of started to make these connections was that I was taught and sort of bought into the idea that our emotions should be level, should be almost like a flat line across the screen. And what I have come to know now is that we as human beings have a range of emotions, and that it is really peaks and valleys, that it is highs and lows and everything in between. And what is health to me now, emotional health, is being able to process through those emotions. It's not feeling the bad emotions, not allowing for myself to feel doubt or fear or grief or sadness or loneliness. Like before, I thought, okay, I can't feel any of that. Like if I feel depressed, if I feel anxious, then I'm not a healthy person. And I think what I've come to recognize now is that actually being depressed and being anxious is part of our human experience. There are moments that cause that kind of emotional response. It is the self-rumination where we get into that looping, where we go like around and around in the merry-go-round, or we spiral down, 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 and we repeat and replay those thoughts, those emotions over and over and over again. That's what becomes unhealthy. It's not the emotion itself. Like I really believe there are no like positive or negative emotions. I really think maybe there are high vibe emotions. There are maybe lower vibe emotions. But in the reality of it, all emotions to me are good and necessary and healthy. And when we can almost neutralize that outlook on emotions, we can give ourselves permission to feel it all and then give ourselves the spiritual discipline to, like you said, integrate, to slow down and to do that spiritual work of processing through, rewriting some of those old tapes, those old scripts, those old blueprints that we have from our past that's sort of on repeat in our mind, our subconscious mind, and letting ourselves tell ourselves a new story, a new narrative, really giving ourselves that ability to and permission to change our response and choose a different thought, choose a different feeling, choose a different way of being. And that to me is where our personal power is. It's not in getting to the place where we just don't feel anymore, or we just don't get triggered anymore, or we're only thinking positive thoughts. It's like, no, like we live in contrast. We live with light and dark. We live with that shadow. We live with positive and negative, which to me is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And allowing all of that to be present, but then sort of knowing, okay, how do I work through this? Like we talked about earlier, going back, the BACK, how do I work through this, process through it to a place where it's like, okay, great. Like I felt that in my body. I felt that in my spirit. I allowed myself to go there, figured out what was old about that, what I wanted to challenge and rewrite, and now choose a new response, a new way of being moving forward. But yeah, it's so interesting to me that we've been taught that health equals being numb when I think it's like totally the opposite.
I remember in high school at one point being like, I haven't cried in 2 years, something crazy. And I don't know how I even existed during that time because I cry all the time. I see an animal video and I'm in tears. It's like once a day. But I totally feel you on that. And really, I think of it as if you're having an emotional experience, are you judging it or attaching to it? Like, how are you relating to this emotion? And that's was a good first step to me, whereas I'm thinking, okay, am I disempowered or empowered by this emotional experience? And disempowered might look like, okay, so I'm feeling really depressed. And instead you attract more depressive thoughts kind of naturally when you're in that lower vibrational state. And so things that normally sound good don't sound good. But then it's like the thoughts of, is this how it always is? Are things going to get better? What's the point of even doing this? And it's like, that's fine. And those can run through you for a little bit. But when you notice, then ask instead, what is this trying to tell me? What in my life could be changed? What is this in response to? And use that as self-reflection. And it's going to be different for everybody. Maybe it came out of the blue and your mind just works where you have depressive episodes sometimes. But then what can it tell you in maybe how to spend your day, or what it takes for you to get out of that, or maybe going on a walk or doing something small or changing the way you're speaking to yourself at that moment. But if we can use it more as guidance instead of something that's going to keep us in that spot, then it's just a passageway to the next thing. And the more that you can learn about yourself, the deeper your relationship with yourself you have, then you're just more empowered in every single experience. And so then if there's a moment where you're going through something really, really hard or mildly hard, you're going to handle it so much differently than if you always let those emotions drag you to where you think they want to take you, or where you're used to going with it. Because again, we do have more power than we think we do. And so choosing to use that power or to learn how to relate to that power is really important, especially if we're going to be able to accomplish our dreams or have a family or these bigger things. Because a lot of times the way we speak to these day-to-day interactions is just a tiny speckle or prism of reflection of how we're going to relate to these bigger aspects of creating a life that we really love.
Totally. And to me, it's like emotions are just feedback, right? Like kind of what you said earlier, Melissa, was how it's just a vibration. Like emotions ultimately are not our identity. And I know that so often we say like, oh, I'm anxious or oh, I'm depressed. And to me, a human being cannot be an emotion. Like as part of our inherent identity, we cannot be the emotion. We can have an emotional experience, but we're not the emotion. And so I think it's really important that as these emotions come up and as we're questioning them, as we're processing them, as we are saying, oh, this is just a vibration. This is just a frequency. This is just a record of my past emotions that I'm feeling in the present. If we kind of go to that idea that emotions are residual chemical records of our past, it's almost like it can create this a little bit of distance from really attaching ourselves to this is who I am. It's almost like I like to see it as a vibration happening outside of my body. Like, oh, this is just something that I'm experiencing. This is a physiological response to the chemistry being produced in my body, for example. It's like if I'm feeling fear, oh, my heart is going to race, my breathing shortens, my chest is going to tighten, my cortisol might spike, my perspiration is going to increase. And so to me, all of the emotions that we're having are a response to this sensation or to this change in my physical body. And when you really get down to it, all of our reactions to people, to thoughts in our minds, to things that are happening in our life are just these physical vibrational reactions to what is arising inside of our body, the sensations of our body. And this is where it's like beautiful, this mind-body connection. But I think when we can go, okay, if my emotions are feedback and they're telling me something, I can use that as leverage to change my behavior, to shift in the decisions that I'm making, to show up in a different way. It's just giving me like clear signal, like either move towards this thing or more move away from this thing. Do I want to go into the story that is giving this emotion more energy? Do I want to play out the scenarios that are intensifying this experience? Or do I say, oh, this is old. This is an old trigger. This is familiar. I know this. Like I know that for me, when I feel anxiety, I'm like, oh yeah, hi old friend. Hi old friend anxiety. I know you. I know you very well. And this is what you feed on. This is what you're afraid of. Oh, this is why you're getting triggered right now. I hear you. I get it. And again, it goes back to that reparenting of like, I hear you. I see you. I get it. And let me calm you. Let me help you know, like, this is just the story. This is just the old wiring. This is just that past coming up to play. Let me comfort you. Let me, choose words that, phrases that, thoughts that, beliefs that begin to quiet that anxiety, comfort that anxiety. And that's the whole thing of coming back, like, what's real? Like, what's real? Like in this moment, I might be feeling a million different things, but what's real? Like the truth is I'm safe. The truth is I'm totally protected and held. The truth is I am enough. The truth is I am worthy of love and belonging right now, no matter what. That is the truth. And I think that the more we can come back using our emotions as feedback to come back to the truth, back to the reality, what is real here and now, that's the freedom part of using our emotions as that gateway to kind of go to the next place, get to the next state, emotional state.
So funny that you've said these things because I put out a morning email every day called the Morning Mind Love. And just like 2 days ago, it was all about not being defined by your thoughts and feelings and realizing that you are not your emotions. You are experiencing your emotions and a little guidance to stay in the present moment because yes, that what is real is so important because we don't even realize that our body is responding to the worst case scenario that we don't even really realize we have. Like sometimes it's like, oh, I'm afraid of not not succeeding in this way, so I'm going to be homeless living on the streets. It's like, is that even a possibility? Don't you have like a mom with an extra bedroom or whatever it is, you know? And so to come back to that, like what is happening right here, right now, I have had to do that so much during this whole COVID process. And I've started to do an evening routine called around processing manifestation events that I've kind of adapted from one of my spiritual mentors, Gary Temple Bodley. But it's all about just picking a time during the day where you felt either what you would consider a positive or negative emotion. And how you said, like, yes, emotions aren't really good or bad. They're an experience. True. To me, I look at things as nothing is really good or bad or right or wrong. It's either limiting or it's beneficial. And so the way I've been doing this is I'm like, okay, well, why did I think that was a negative emotion? What was the limiting belief behind it? And sometimes it takes some thought of being like, oh, I thought I was going to fail there. Or I was upset that this happened because I was afraid of the future and not having enough money to pay rent or whatever it is. So find that limiting belief. And then if it's a limiting belief, then write as much evidence as I can from either in my own experience or what I've seen in the world that proves it wrong. And so even if you can find plenty of things that proves this limiting belief right, ignore those things. That's not what you're doing here. You're trying to reroute your beliefs. And I've been doing the same thing with positive things. If I experience something positive, what's that beneficial belief? Now let me use this time to reinforce that as much as possible. So that's just been my little evening journaling activity. And it's pretty amazing because at first it would take a lot of work. And now I'm finding myself doing it more in a real time. So it's been really helpful though.
That is so powerful. I'm just thinking like that is the work, isn't it? Like that is that moment of taking hold of your life, taking hold of your mind and shifting it. Like when you find yourself in those stories, those limiting beliefs, shifting it, changing it, like actively finding the proof to support how you really want to be, a thought and a belief that's empowering versus disempowering. God, I just love that. Like that is it. That's the work.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation. It's exactly what I needed to kind of bring my energy back up through all the things my body's been going through. So for listeners who are resonating with you as much as I am, where's the best place for them to connect with you online? And is there anything else that you'd like them to know?
Yeah. So you can definitely connect to me on maryhyatt.com, which is my website. You'll find all my social links there. I'm super active on Instagram. It's my favorite social channel. So follow me, Mary G. Hyatt. Give me a shout out in the DMs because I'll totally say hey and respond. But I do have a special gift if that is cool, if I can share that with your audience.
Yes.
Yeah. So I have a free anxiety recovery kit, and this includes 3 guided meditations, one that includes even like a panic attack guided meditation. I have a breathing exercise, which is amazing. It helps to lower your stress levels, your cortisol levels immediately, and then an essential oil blend recipe for anxiety. And so to grab that anxiety recover kit, you can just go to maryhyatt.com/recovery kit to grab all those resources.
All the links from this episode will be at mindlove.com/140. So this week, I encourage you to just bring a little bit more awareness to your emotional state. It can be really easy to just be moving through each moment of the day and not really realize when we are overwhelmed because we're so used to shoving it down or moving past it or just not giving it the time that it needs. One thing that I've been practicing doing is just taking notice when I feel tense. And sometimes it can be difficult in the moment because bringing awareness while we're having that emotional response is like 2 conflicting energies, like one's resisting the other. So I mentioned that process that I've been doing at the end of each day, and that might be a good way to start. So at the end of the day, when you're in a more calm and balanced state, do a little reflection. Try to recall a moment that you felt either really good or really low, and spend some time journaling about that. My personal process is to first write what I was feeling and what I think caused it. Now, I know that we're used to thinking that the external environment or other people are the things that cause our emotions, but really these emotions are based on a limiting belief, which is why we're perceiving that event in a negative way. So try to spend a few moments uncovering the limiting belief that is contributing to that negative emotion. If it's a positive emotion, spend some time understanding the beneficial belief and write that down. Now, if it's a limiting belief, it's always wrong. So you want to spend time proving that limiting belief wrong. So if the limiting belief is that aren't abundant or that the universe isn't supporting you because maybe you felt stressed out when a new bill came or something along those lines, then write evidence for how the universe is always supporting you and all of the other areas in your life that you feel abundance. Now, if it's a beneficial belief, say you got a check in the mail you weren't expecting, or a new client, or just something amazing happened, uncover the beneficial belief and then use some time to reinforce that belief. Write even more evidence from your world and your reality, or from what you've seen in other people's lives, that reinforces that beneficial belief. The more you do this, the more you actually consciously and intentionally change your belief system, which will change your reality and the way that you perceive the world. So those in the exclusive membership community, at whatever tier that you join, I have a worksheet that will help you and guide you through this whole process that you can use over and over again. So just log into your membership Nook and it'll be under worksheets. So if you know of anybody that's had trouble dealing with their emotions, or they pride themselves on stuffing their emotions down, please share this episode with them. You can take a screenshot and send it, or press the little share button and send it directly to them. Or if you want to be one of my favorites, take a screenshot and share this on Instagram or some other social media platform and tag Mind Love Melissa and Mind Love Podcast. If you do, I'll send you a little voice message thanking you. And if you love these episodes, please consider joining Mind Love Premium. You get double the episodes plus exclusive meditations, and you get a little place in my heart. So there's a lot of changes that are happening in 2020, and it's really important that we're all trying to figure out ways to have a little bit more control over our platforms. And so doing this really supports the creation of Mind Love. It helps me show up better and do what I feel I do best. So I really appreciate all of those of you who have signed up already. And if you have any questions about it, shoot me an email.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.